They think that removing me from the most important day would have no consequences. They're wrong. Sometimes the person who's absent is the one who matters most. Growing up as the eldest daughter in the Chen family meant one thing. I was the designated fixer. While other kids my age were worrying about prom dates and college applications, I was calculating grocery budgets and mediating family arguments. My name is Maya, and at 28, I've spent more than half my life making sure everyone else's world keeps spinning. It started when I was 14, and Dad lost his job at the manufacturing plant. Mom was already working 2 part-time jobs just to keep us afloat, and suddenly we went from comfortable middle class to counting every penny. That's when I learned that being the responsible one wasn't just a personality trait, it was a survival skill. I got a job at the local flower shop after school, not because I loved flowers, but because we needed the money for groceries. My little sister Sophia was only 11 then, still young enough to be shielded from the harsh realities. While I was learning how to arrange funeral bouquets and wedding centerpieces, she was still playing with dolls and believing in fairy tales. Mom and Dad made sure of that. Maya's just more mature, they'd say when relatives asked why I was always working while Sophia got to be a kid. She understands the situation better. By the time I graduated high school, I had already made my choice. The full scholarship to Northwestern was tempting, but Sophia was starting high school, and she deserved the chance to have a normal teenage experience. Someone had to make sure she could join the drama club without worrying about the costume fees, or go to homecoming without stressing about the dress cost. That someone was me. I turned down the scholarship and stayed local, working full-time at Chin's Garden restaurant while taking night classes in business management. It wasn't the path I had dreamed of, but watching Sophia thrive made it worth it. She was everything I couldn't be at her age, carefree, confident, and absolutely radiant. Where I was practical and serious, she was spontaneous and charming. Where I learned to blend into the background, she commanded attention the moment she walked into a room. The flower shop job had sparked something in me, though. I started noticing how weddings worked, how events came together, how one person's vision could transform a simple space into something magical. By 25, I had saved enough to start my own wedding planning business. It wasn't glamorous, mostly small ceremonies for couples on tight budgets, but I was good at it, really good. I could stretch a $1,000 budget to look like $10,000, and I could solve problems that would send other planners into panic attacks. Sophia noticed my success, but in a different way than I expected. Instead of pride, I started seeing something else in her eyes: embarrassment. It became obvious during her senior year of college when she brought friends home for dinner. She'd introduce me as my sister Maya. She runs a small local business, with an emphasis on small and local that made it clear she wished I did something more impressive. That's when Derek Ashworth III entered the picture. Sophia met Derek at a charity gala her sorority was attending. He was everything she had been dreaming of since she was that 11-year-old girl playing princess dress-up. Tall, handsome, impeccably dressed, and wealthy beyond anything our family had ever imagined. His family owned Ashworth Financial, a private banking firm that managed portfolios for people who owned multiple vacation homes and had never worried about whether they could afford groceries. Derek fell for Sophia immediately, and honestly, I couldn't blame him. At 25, she had grown into the kind of woman who could stop traffic. Long black hair that always looked like she'd just stepped out of a salon, naturally flawless skin, and a smile that could convince anyone to do anything. But more than that, she had this confidence that came from never having to doubt whether she was wanted or valued. She moved through the world like she belonged everywhere, because in her experience, she always had. Their relationship moved fast. Within 6 months, Derek was bringing her to Ashworth family events. Within a year, she was spending holidays at their estate in the Hamptons instead of at home with us. I watched my little sister transform from the girl who used to steal cookies from my purse into someone who corrected Mom's grammar and winced when Dad told his old construction jokes. "It's not that I'm embarrassed," she explained to me one evening when I confronted her about missing Dad's birthday dinner to attend a wine tasting with Derek's parents. "It's just that Derek's family is different. They have certain expectations about presentation and social awareness. I need to learn how to fit into their world." "What about our world?" I asked. Does Derek fit into ours? She looked at me like I had asked whether Derek could survive on Mars. Maya, his family's net worth is more than our entire neighborhood combined. He doesn't need to fit into our world. I need to fit into his. The engagement happened at Christmas, during an elaborate proposal at the Ashworth estate that Sophia live-streamed for all her friends. The ring was so enormous it looked like costume jewelry, and Derek's proposal speech was the kind of thing you'd see in movies. Sophia cried beautiful tears that didn't smudge her makeup, and everyone commented about what a perfect couple they made. But something had changed in how she looked at me. Where there used to be sisterly affection, now there was assessment. I could see her comparing my off-the-rack clothes to her designer outfits, my practical Honda to Derek's Tesla, my small apartment to their plans for a sprawling suburban mansion. I was no longer her big sister who had sacrificed for her dreams. I was a reminder of where she came from, and increasingly, that felt like something she wanted to forget. The first sign of real trouble came when Derek's mother, Patricia Ashworth, started getting involved in wedding planning. Patricia was the kind of woman who had never worked a day in her life, but somehow managed to be busy every second of every day with charity boards and social committees. She had opinions about everything, and her opinion about our family was crystal clear from the moment she started dropping subtle comments. "Oh, a local wedding planner," she said when Sophia mentioned that I might handle the wedding. "How quaint. Of course, for an event of this magnitude, you'll want someone with experience in high society celebrations. I have a list of recommended vendors who understand the kind of quality the Ashworth name requires." I watched Sophia's face during that conversation, saw the exact moment she started seeing me through Patricia's eyes. Instead of her talented sister who had built a successful business from nothing, I became the amateur local planner who wasn't sophisticated enough for their circle. The assumption that I would plan Sophia's wedding wasn't even something we had discussed. It was just understood. I had planned every family celebration for the past 5 years, from milestone birthdays to anniversary parties. I knew Sophia's taste better than anyone, knew what would make her happy versus what would just look impressive. More than that, planning her wedding felt like the culmination of everything I had sacrificed for. This was supposed to be my gift to her. My way of showing that all those years of putting her first had led to something beautiful. I started making preliminary notes, sketching out ideas that would honor both her dreams and our family's budget. I researched venues that could provide elegance without bankruptcy, found ways to create the magical atmosphere she'd always wanted. I even reached out to some of my higher-end vendor contacts to see about special pricing for family. That's when Sophia asked if we could have lunch, just the two of us. We met at a trendy bistro downtown, the kind of place where a salad costs more than our family used to spend on entire meals. Sophia arrived 10 minutes late, apologizing while checking her phone, looking every inch the busy bride-to-be. She was wearing a cream-colored designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and her engagement ring caught the light every time she gestured. "Maya, I need to talk to you about the wedding," she began, and something in her tone immediately put me on guard. It was the voice she used when she was about to say something she knew I wouldn't like but had already decided was non-negotiable. "I've been thinking a lot about this, and Derek and I have decided to hire Preston Events to handle everything." Preston Events. Even I knew that name. They were the most exclusive wedding planning firm in the city, the kind of company that charged more for consultations than most people spent on their entire weddings. They planned events for celebrities, politicians, old-money families who had been throwing elaborate parties for generations. "Preston Events," I repeated, trying to keep my voice neutral. That's quite an investment." "Derek's parents are contributing significantly to the wedding budget," Sophia said, not meeting my eyes. "They want to make sure everything is absolutely perfect. Preston has experience with the kind of sophisticated celebration we're planning." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "Sophia, I've been planning weddings for 3 years. I've never had a single complaint, and my couples always—" "Maya." She cut me off gently but firmly. "This isn't about your skills. It's about fit. Preston understands the social dynamics of high society events. They know how to handle guest lists that include senators and CEOs. They have relationships with vendors who work exclusively with elite clientele. And I don't? You work with normal people, good people, she added quickly. But normal people. This wedding is going to be different. The guest list alone is worth more than... She stopped herself, but I heard the end of that sentence anyway. More than our entire neighborhood. More than our family. More than me. I want this to be perfect, Maya. I can't risk it with someone who's never handled anything at this level before. Each word felt like a physical blow. Someone who's never handled anything at this level, as if the past 3 years of building my business from nothing, of creating beautiful moments for couples who trusted me with their most important day, meant nothing because those couples drove Honda Civics instead of BMWs. So what you're saying, I said slowly, is that I'm not good enough for your wedding. That's not what I'm saying at all. But her face told a different story. I'm saying that Preston is the right choice for this particular event. You understand, don't you? You've always been so good at understanding. There it was. The expectation that I would be reasonable, that I would understand, that I would put her needs first like I always had. Because that's who Maya was, the understanding sister, the one who sacrificed without complaint, the one who always made things easier for everyone else. Of course, I heard myself saying. Of course I understand. But something had shifted inside me, something fundamental and irreversible. For the first time in my life, understanding felt like giving up a piece of myself I wasn't sure I could afford to lose. The wedding invitation arrived 3 weeks later, addressed to Maya Chen in formal calligraphy on heavy cream cardstock that probably cost more per sheet than I spent on office supplies in a month. It was beautiful, elegant, and completely devoid of warmth. Just my name, not Maya and Emma, even though Sophia had known my 8-year-old daughter since the day she was born. I called Sophia immediately. "Oh, about Emma," she said, her voice taking on that careful tone again. "Maya, we've decided to have an adults-only ceremony. Derek's family feels that children can be unpredictable during formal events. You understand? Adults only." My daughter, who called Sophia Aunt Sophie and had been planning her flower girl dress since the engagement announcement, was being excluded from her own aunt's wedding. "Sophia, Emma is your niece. She's been looking forward to this for months." "I know, and I feel terrible about it, but Patricia, Derek's mother, she's very firm about maintaining a certain atmosphere. Children can be disruptive during formal ceremonies, and with the guest list we have, we can't afford any complications." Complications. My daughter was a complication. "Where exactly will I be sitting?" I asked, suddenly needing to know how far this exclusion extended. There was a pause. "Well, we've had to be very strategic about seating arrangements. Derek's family has a lot of business associates attending, and we need to consider relationship dynamics and networking opportunities." "Sophia, where am I sitting?" "Table 12. Near the back, with Dad's cousin Robert and his family." Table 12. I didn't need to see the venue layout to know that Table 12 was nowhere near the family section. Table 12 was where you put people you had to invite but didn't particularly want to see. The dress code on the invitation was another slap. Black tie evening wear required. Cocktail attire not appropriate. Black tie meant a gown that would cost at least $500, not including shoes, accessories, and professional hair and makeup. For someone who shopped at Target and planned her purchases around sales, it might as well have required a tiara and crown jewels. "Maya?" Sophia's voice brought me back to the phone call. "You're being very quiet." "I'm just processing," I said. "Let me ask you something, Sophia. If you could go back and change how the last 14 years went, would you?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, if you could go back to when Dad lost his job, would you rather that I had taken that scholarship to Northwestern? Would you prefer that you had gotten a job at 14 instead of me? Would you like to have been the one working nights so you could pay for my prom dress and graduation party?" "Maya, that's not fair. You know I'm grateful for everything you've done." "Are you? Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like you're embarrassed by everything I've done. My business isn't sophisticated enough. My daughter is too disruptive. I'm not connected enough. I'm not wealthy enough. I'm not good enough." "That's not true. Isn't it? Tell me, Sophia, when you introduce me to Derek's family, how do you describe me?" Silence. Do you tell them I'm the sister who gave up college so you could have a normal childhood? Do you mention that I worked 60-hour weeks so you could join clubs and go on school trips? Do you explain that I started my business with money I saved by eating ramen for 6 months? Maya, please don't make this about. Or do you just say I'm a local wedding planner and hope they don't ask too many questions? You're being unfair. You know what's unfair, Sophia? Unfair is being treated like a stranger at my own sister's wedding. Unfair is having my daughter excluded from her aunt's special day. Unfair is being dismissed as not sophisticated enough after spending my entire adult life making sure you could become sophisticated. I could hear her crying now, soft sniffles that once would have made me immediately apologize and backtrack. But something had broken inside me during this conversation, something that had been cracking for months as I watched my sister transform into someone who saw me as an embarrassment rather than a support system. Maybe, I said quietly, it would be better if I just didn't come. You're right. I would feel out of place anyway. Maya, don't say that. Of course I want you there. Do you? Because it sounds like you want someone there who looks like me and shares our DNA, but you don't actually want me. You want a version of me that fits into your new world, and that person doesn't exist. That's not true. I love you. I know you do. But love isn't enough anymore, is it? Not when it comes with shame. I hung up before she could respond, my hands shaking as I set the phone down on my kitchen counter. Emma was at the table doing homework, her dark hair falling across her face as she concentrated on math problems. She looked up when she heard me end the call. Mom, are you okay? I'm fine, baby. How's your homework coming? Good. Mom, when is Aunt Sophie's wedding again? I want to make sure I finish all my summer reading before then so I can help with whatever she needs. I looked at my daughter, this beautiful, innocent child who had been excited for months about participating in her aunt's wedding, and felt something crystallize inside me. Emma deserved better than being treated like an inconvenience. I deserved better than being treated like a charity case. Actually, sweetheart, I've been thinking. What would you say to taking a vacation that weekend instead? Just you and me. Emma's face lit up. Really? Where would we go? Somewhere beautiful, somewhere we can relax and have fun and not worry about anything except enjoying ourselves. That sounds amazing. But what about Aunt Sophie's wedding? I smiled, and for the first time in weeks, it felt genuine. Aunt Sophie has made it very clear that she doesn't need us there. So we're going to go somewhere we're actually wanted, with each other. That night, after Emma went to bed, I sat at my laptop and researched cruise packages. I had been saving money for months to buy Sophia an extravagant wedding gift, something that would show how proud I was of her and how much I wanted her marriage to be perfect. Instead, I booked a 7-day Caribbean cruise for Emma and me, departing the Friday before Sophia's Saturday wedding. As I entered my credit card information, I felt a strange sense of liberation. For the first time in my adult life, I was choosing myself. I was choosing my daughter. I was choosing to spend my money and my time and my emotional energy on people who valued my presence instead of tolerating it. I wrote out my RSVP card in careful handwriting. Maya Chen will not be attending. I didn't include an explanation or an apology. I simply would not be there. The next morning, I set my phone to automatically forward to voicemail and activated my email autoresponder. Out of office indefinitely. For immediate assistance, please contact. I paused, then deleted that line. For the next week, no one would be getting immediate assistance from me. The world would have to figure out how to function without Maya Chen holding it together. What I didn't realize as I sealed that RSVP envelope was just how much the world, or at least my family's world, actually depended on me holding it together. In focusing so much on being excluded from Sophia's perfect day, I had forgotten about all the ways I was included in everyone's regular days. I had forgotten that being the reliable one meant people relied on me for more than just emotional support. I had forgotten that I wasn't just Sophia's sister. I was the family's coordinator, problem solver, emergency contact, and safety net. I was the person who remembered everyone's birthdays, who kept track of medical appointments, who had all the important phone numbers saved in her contacts. I was the one who knew which vendors gave family discounts, who understood how to navigate insurance claims, who could talk Grandma through her medication schedule over the phone. But I wouldn't remember any of that until much later. In that moment, all I felt was the relief of finally putting myself first. Emma and I would leave for our cruise on Friday morning. Sophia's wedding was Saturday evening. By the time everyone realized they needed me, I would be somewhere in the middle of the Caribbean Sea, with my phone turned off and my responsibilities temporarily abandoned. For 1 week, Maya Chen would be unavailable. And sometimes you don't realize how much you need someone until they're gone. The morning of Sophia's wedding dawned gray and drizzly, which would have been the first sign of trouble if anyone in my family believed in omens. But they were all too busy with last-minute preparations to notice the weather, and I was 300 miles away on the deck of the Caribbean Princess, watching Emma feed dolphins while the Florida sunshine warmed my shoulders. I had turned my phone completely off the moment we boarded the ship. Not just on silent, not just airplane mode, completely powered down and tucked away in the bottom of my suitcase. For the first time in 14 years, Maya Chen was officially unreachable, and the freedom felt almost overwhelming. Emma was having the time of her life. She had made friends with twin girls from Ohio whose parents were celebrating their 20th anniversary, and the four of them spent their days racing between the pool deck and the arcade, while the adults relaxed with fruity drinks and paperback novels. Watching my daughter experience this kind of carefree joy reminded me of what childhood was supposed to look like, something I had forgotten during my own abbreviated adolescence. But back home, Sophia's perfect day was beginning to unravel before it even officially started. The trouble began at 6 a.m. when Patricia Ashworth arrived at the venue for final inspections and discovered that the floral arrangements were completely wrong. Instead of the white orchids and baby's breath that had been specifically ordered for the ceremony, the delivery truck had brought red roses and carnations, the arrangements meant for another wedding happening across town. "This is completely unacceptable," Patricia announced to anyone within hearing distance, her voice carrying the particular authority of someone who had never been told no in her entire life. Preston Events assured us that every detail would be perfect. This is exactly the kind of amateur mistake I was worried about. The Preston Events coordinator, a nervous 20-something named Ashley who was covering for her boss who had called in sick, frantically called the florist. But it was Saturday morning of wedding season, and the correct flowers were already being set up at the other venue. The florist offered to send what they had available, but it would be mixed seasonal flowers, nothing like the elegant, cohesive look Sophia had planned. "Can't you just call the other venue and swap?" Derek asked, trying to be helpful while simultaneously texting his groomsmen about various other small crises that were beginning to pile up. "The other wedding is happening at the same time as yours," Ashley explained, her voice getting higher with stress. "And honestly, even if we could coordinate a swap, we don't have the manpower to completely redo both arrangements in—" She checked her watch. 8 hours. That's when Patricia made the suggestion that would set the entire day's tone. "Where is Sophia's sister? Doesn't she do events? Surely she could help with this crisis." Derek looked confused. "Maya? I thought she wasn't coming." "Not coming?" Patricia's voice could have frozen water. "What do you mean, not coming? What kind of family member doesn't attend their own sister's wedding?" Meanwhile, Sophia was in the bridal suite, trying to get her hair done while fielding increasingly frantic phone calls. The makeup artist was running late because of traffic. The photographer was asking about the timeline, which apparently had never been properly coordinated with the ceremony musicians. The caterer needed someone to confirm the final head count and discuss last-minute dietary restrictions that guests had forgotten to mention until this morning. "Just handle it," Sophia kept saying into her phone, not realizing that the person who usually handled it for family events was currently somewhere off the coast of Grand Cayman, blissfully unaware that her presence was desperately needed. By noon, the small problems had snowballed into major disasters. The sound system for the ceremony had been tested and was producing an awful feedback whine that no one could figure out how to fix. The venue's backup coordinator had called in sick, leaving Ashley as the only Preston Events staff member on site, and she was clearly in over her head. But the real catastrophe began in the kitchen. The catering company, Elevated Dining, prided itself on using only the freshest ingredients and most sophisticated preparation techniques. Unfortunately, sophisticated preparation techniques don't account for one of their prep cooks showing up to work with a stomach virus. By the time anyone realized that several dishes had been contaminated, guests were already arriving for the cocktail hour, and people were beginning to get sick, not just mildly uncomfortable, actually violently ill. Derek's uncle, a federal judge, spent the cocktail hour vomiting in the men's restroom. 3 bridesmaids were pale and shaky by the time they were supposed to walk down the aisle. The mayor's wife, who Patricia had specifically invited to impress, had to leave in an ambulance. "We need to call the health department," Derek said, looking green around the gills himself. "We need to shut down the food service immediately." "Absolutely not!" Patricia snapped. "Do you have any idea how this will look? The Ashworth name cannot be associated with a public health incident. We'll serve only beverages and handle the situation discreetly." But there was nothing discreet about the growing number of guests who were either sick or fleeing the venue to avoid getting sick. The carefully crafted guest list of senators, CEOs, and social elite was rapidly becoming a collection of empty seats and whispered concerns about lawsuits. Sophia, still in her bridal suite, was beginning to panic. "Where is Maya?" she kept asking anyone who would listen. "Maya would know what to do. Maya always knows what to do. Why isn't anyone answering Maya's phone?" That's when Mom finally admitted the truth. "Honey, Maya isn't coming to the wedding. You two had that fight, remember? She went on vacation with Emma instead." "Vacation?" Sophia's voice reached a pitch that could have shattered crystal. "She went on vacation during my wedding? How could she do this to me?" "Sophia," Mom said gently, "you told her not to come. You said she'd feel out of place." "I didn't mean she should actually not come. I meant—" But Sophia couldn't finish that sentence, because what she had meant was that Maya should come and be grateful for the scraps of inclusion she was offered, should sit quietly at table 12 and not expect to be treated like family, should understand her place in the new hierarchy without making anyone feel guilty about it. The ceremony was supposed to begin at 4 p.m. By 3:30, with half the guests gone and the other half sick, Derek's father made an executive decision. "We're postponing," he announced. "This is a disaster, and continuing would be—" He paused, looking for the right word. "Humiliating," Patricia finished for him, and everyone pretended not to notice that she was looking directly at Sophia when she said it. The vendors still had to be paid. The venue still charged for the full day. The photographer captured every moment of the disaster, from the wrong flowers to the ambulance in the parking lot to the bride crying in her $1,000 dress while her makeup streaked down her face. But the worst part wasn't the money or the humiliation or even the ruined wedding. The worst part was the growing realization of everything and everyone they had taken for granted. Maya would have caught the catering problem early, Mom said quietly to Dad as they helped pack up the unused decorations. She always tastes everything beforehand. She never trusts vendors to handle safety on their own. Maya would have had backup vendors, Dad agreed. And she would have had a timeline that actually worked. She would have made sure everyone knew what they were supposed to be doing when. Derek, who had spent the last 6 months hearing about how unsophisticated Maya's business was, found himself asking questions no one could answer. Who are Maya's vendor contacts? Does she have relationships with florists who could fix this? Does she know sound technicians who could have prevented the audio problems? But Maya's business contacts were Maya's business contacts. The relationships she had built through 3 years of careful networking, of treating vendors with respect, of paying invoices on time and referring clients generously. Those relationships were hers. And Maya was somewhere in the Caribbean, completely unreachable. The society pages, which were supposed to feature glamorous photos of the wedding of the year, instead ran a small notice about the event being postponed due to unforeseen circumstances. But social media told the real story. Ashworth wedding fail was trending within hours, with guests posting photos of the disasters and sharing stories about the food poisoning. Derek's business associates were texting him with barely concealed amusement. His parents' social circle was buzzing with gossip. The wedding that was supposed to elevate Sophia's status had instead become a cautionary tale about what happens when you prioritize appearance over substance. Meanwhile, Emma and I were having the most relaxing week of our lives. We slept until we woke up naturally, which, for both of us, turned out to be around 9 a.m., a luxury neither of us had experienced in years. We spent long, lazy mornings on the deck reading books and playing card games. We took a cooking class where Emma learned to make fresh pasta, and I discovered that I was actually pretty good at making bread from scratch when I wasn't rushing to meet deadlines. In the afternoons, we explored different ports. In Cozumel, we went snorkeling and Emma saw her first sea turtle. In Jamaica, we took a gentle horseback ride through the mountains and ate fresh mango that was sweet enough to make us both groan with pleasure. In Grand Cayman, we swam with stingrays, and I watched my daughter's confidence grow as she realized she was braver than she had thought. But the most important thing that happened during that cruise wasn't any specific activity. It was the conversations Emma and I had during the quiet moments. Conversations about family, about self-worth, about the difference between being needed and being valued. "Mom," Emma said one evening as we watched the sunset from our balcony, "are you sad about missing Aunt Sophie's wedding?" I thought about it carefully before answering. "I'm sad about what the wedding represents, sweetheart. I'm sad that your aunt has reached a point where she's ashamed of where she comes from. But am I sad about missing the actual event? No. I'm not sad about that at all." Is she going to be mad at us for not being there? Probably. But, Emma, one of the most important things you can learn is that you can't control how other people feel. You can only control how you treat them and how you let them treat you. And what your aunt was asking, expecting us to be grateful for being barely included, that's not how family should treat each other. Emma was quiet for a moment, processing this. "So we're not being mean by taking a vacation instead? We're taking care of ourselves instead of accepting poor treatment. There's a difference, even though it might not always feel like it." That conversation with Emma clarified something I hadn't fully understood until that moment. This cruise wasn't about punishing Sophia or proving a point. It was about refusing to accept scraps and call them a feast. It was about teaching my daughter that she deserved to be treated with respect and kindness, not just tolerated as an inconvenience. I met other women on that cruise who shared similar stories during our late-night conversations in the ship's lounge. Sarah from Milwaukee had finally left her job after 20 years of being passed over for promotions in favor of less qualified male colleagues. Jennifer from Denver had ended a friendship with someone who only called when she needed favors, but was never available when Jennifer needed support. Maria from Phoenix had stopped hosting family holidays after her relatives consistently showed up empty-handed and complained about her cooking. "It's like we're all finally learning the same lesson," Sarah said one night over drinks. "That being the understanding one in every relationship just means everyone gets to treat you badly and expect you to be grateful for it. The hardest part," Jennifer added, "is that people act like you're being selfish when you finally start treating yourself with the same kindness you've always shown everyone else." These conversations were revelation after revelation. I wasn't alone in feeling taken for granted. I wasn't wrong to want reciprocal relationships. I wasn't being overly sensitive by expecting my family to treat me with basic respect. By the time our cruise ended and Emma and I flew back home, I felt fundamentally changed. Not bitter, not angry, but clear. Clear about my worth, clear about my boundaries, clear about what I would and wouldn't accept going forward. I turned my phone on during our layover in Miami and watched 14 missed calls and 37 text messages flood in. Most were from family members, but some were from vendors I had worked with, clients whose events were coming up, and friends who had heard about the wedding disaster through social media and wanted to check on me. The messages from my family ranged from frantic to angry to pleading. Sophia had sent 12 texts, starting with, "Where are you?" and ending with, "Please call me back. I need you. Everything fell apart and I don't know what to do." Mom had called 6 times, her voicemails getting increasingly worried. "Maya, honey, we need to talk. There's been some complications with the wedding. Please, call when you get this." Even Derek had texted, which was unprecedented. Maya, I know we haven't talked much, but Sophia really needs her sister right now. Could you please call her back? But it was the messages from my professional contacts that really drove home what had happened in my absence. 3 different vendors had been contacted by desperate family members asking for my contact information. 2 clients had been called by relatives trying to get Maya Chen to respond to emergency calls that had nothing to do with their events. Maya, read a text from Lisa, a photographer I worked with regularly. Your family has been calling everyone trying to reach you. They seem to think I can just make you answer your phone. Just wanted you to know they're telling people there was some kind of family emergency and you're needed urgently. Hope everything's okay and you're just choosing to be unreachable on purpose. That last line made me smile. Lisa knew me well enough to recognize that Maya Chen being unreachable wasn't likely to be an accident. But I didn't return any of the calls that night. Emma and I got home, unpacked our souvenirs, and ordered pizza while she showed me her vacation journal. Detailed drawings of every sea creature we had seen, along with her thoughts about the trip written in her careful 8-year-old handwriting. Best vacation ever, she had written on the last page. Mom was happy the whole time. I want her to be happy like this always. That simple sentence from my daughter hit me harder than any of the frantic voicemails from my family. Emma had noticed that I was different when I wasn't constantly managing everyone else's problems. She had seen me relaxed and present in a way that apparently was rare enough to comment on. That night, after Emma went to bed, I finally listened to all the voicemails and read all the texts. The story they told was exactly what I had expected, and yet somehow more dramatic than I had imagined. The wedding hadn't just gone poorly, it had been a complete catastrophe that was still making waves a week later. But more than that, the messages revealed just how much my family had relied on me for things I hadn't even realized I was handling. They needed vendor contacts for rebooking everything. They needed someone who understood insurance claims for the food poisoning incident. They needed someone who could coordinate with venues for a possible second attempt at the ceremony. Most of all, they needed someone to fix what had gone wrong, and they were discovering that the person who usually fixed everything for them was no longer available to clean up messes she hadn't created. I went to bed that night with a strange sense of calm. Tomorrow, I would call Sophia back. Tomorrow, I would deal with the aftermath of choosing myself for once. But tonight, I was going to sleep peacefully, knowing that my daughter had seen me happy and strong and unwilling to accept less than I deserved. The old Maya would have rushed to help, would have dropped everything to solve everyone else's problems, would have felt guilty for being unavailable during a family crisis. But the new Maya, the Maya who had spent a week being valued and appreciated and treated well, that Maya was going to approach this situation very differently. Some relationships can survive a shift in power dynamics, others can't. But either way, I was done being the family member who gave everything and received scraps in return. When I finally called Sophia back the next morning, it would be as someone who knew her own worth. And for the first time in our relationship, that was going to make all the difference.